This afternoon I've just concluded a successful bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. It was a very positive and constructive discussion, and I was pleased that it was held. We know that China is Australia's largest trading partner. They are worth more than Japan, US and Republic of Korea together combined. So it's an important relationship for Australia. And Australia seeks a stable relationship with China. We have big differences to manage, but we're always going to be better off when we have dialogue and are able to talk constructively and respectfully, but also honestly about what those differences are, and we were able to do that this afternoon. Today, I think both countries took an important step to moving forward. There are many steps, of course, that we are yet to take, and I have said consistently since before I became Prime Minister, we'll cooperate where we can, disagree where we must, and act in the national interest. One of the things that struck me was that both of us spoke about how we have highly complementary economies. It is clearly in Australia's interest to export some of the fine products that we have. It's in China's interest to receive those fine products. And so it was a very constructive discussion. I think it was a positive development in our relationship as we approach the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Australia and the People's Republic of China that, of course, occurred post the Whitlam government's election that we will celebrate with the opening of Goff's House in Cabramatta on the 2nd of December, but also, of course, the signing that came into effect on the 21st of December 1972 when our respective ambassadors signed the agreement to recognise each other in Paris. Happy to take questions. One at a time. Phil.
In terms of tangibles from the discussion, was there any mention of resuming annual dialogue, leadership dialogue we used to have with China, or like the Blinken visit to China which came out of the Biden talks? Was there any suggestion on your minister, Senator Wong or Farrell?
We agreed that there'd be further dialogue. There have, of course, already been meetings between our foreign ministers and our defence ministers, and we agreed that that was a positive thing. The foreign minister was there at the meeting along with other senior officials from China, as well as our head of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet and our head of Foreign Affairs. So I would expect that there will be further meetings.
Prime Minister.
You said a minute ago that this afternoon you were able to communicate honestly as leaders in peers and also articulate differences. What differences did you articulate?
I put forward Australia's position when it comes to the blockages in our trading relationship. I put forward the differences that we have on human rights issues, including Xinjiang. I put forward specifically as well the cases of Cheng Lei and Dr. Yong. And I also put forward our position on Ukraine and asked that China exercise its influence on Russia, specifically about Russia's threats to use tactical nuclear weapons. I noted that China had called that out and that is a good thing.
Prime Minister, should we read anything into the...
Prime Minister, the $20 billion question, was there any sign of a concession from President Xi on the trade embargoes?
It was a positive discussion. We put forward our position. It was not anticipated that a meeting such as that, you get immediate declarations that I believe if people thought that would happen, then that was not realistic. But it was very constructive. Yep. Yep.
Prime Minister.
I was going to ask about a potential Penny Wong visit, but I think you answered.
Okay.
Prime Minister, should we...
Just here and there.
Prime Minister,
I'm coming around.
Sorry, thank you.
You talked about next steps, and also in the lead up to the visit, the Chinese side talked about Australia needing to meet China halfway. Was there any discussion about any concessions or conciliatory moves on Australia's part? And what are the next steps in terms of, is there a date for further talks, or we're going to take another 6 months to work it out?
I put forward Australia's position, and that's what I do. That's the way I deal with people, and I put forward our position very clearly. My view, I've used the language of moving forward together is the language that I've used.
Prime Minister, should we read anything into the fact the meeting was 32 minutes long, and did you raise issues of climate change, cybersecurity, foreign interference, Taiwan, and any actions on any of those matters you wanted from China?
I certainly raised climate change and the need for us to work together in tackling climate change. I referred to the floods that are occurring in New South Wales. That climate change is a global issue and it requires a global response, and China has an important role to play. On Taiwan, I certainly raised that issue. I put Australia's position, which is support for the status quo, which I put forward in the meeting, and that we didn't wish to see any change to that status quo.
And what was the response to that, and why? And sorry, the first part of the question, 32 minutes.
Now you're sneaking in a second.
No, but you haven't answered the first, sorry, Prime Minister. Should we read anything into the length of the meeting? Did he end it?
No, it was. It ended, went over time of when it was scheduled, and it was very constructive. The media were present for our opening remarks. The President then spoke, I spoke, and we had a dialogue and responded to each other's comments. It was a warm discussion. The President spoke about his visits to Australia very warmly. The fact that he has visited every state and territory in Australia. He pointed out that Tasmania was the last state that he hadn't visited, and that he spoke about his visit there in 2014 after he just hit and then met.
Was there any indication from the President that he will consider lifting trade sanctions?
Look, we put forward our position, and he said that we have highly complementary economies, so we use similar language in that. But it wasn't. It is not that sort of process. This isn't a discussion at a commercial level. What it is, the system doesn't work that way, and it was a very constructive discussion, is how I would put it. Australia's position is very clear. I put the position clearly, firmly, but politely. And that is what I intended to do, and that's what I did.
Beijing in the past has raised concerns about AUKUS, the AUKUS Pact, and has raised concerns about Australia speaking out publicly on human rights issues. Did President Xi raise that with you, and what did you respond on those issues?
No, he did not raise. AUKUS was not raised in the discussion. No, it was not raised in the discussion.
Any strategic rivalry issues?
No, it wasn't raised except for in our general comments. People are aware, it was acknowledged that we have differences. We have different systems, and our system works differently from the Chinese system, where we're an open democracy, and therefore this is part of our process that we have of our system. We acknowledge that there are differences there, but that we need to be open and honest about those differences going forward.
Prime Minister, you said that you raised the
Thank Claire.
You raised the cases of Yang Hengjun and Chen Lai. Did you get any undertakings from the Chinese President about how he would be looking at those cases, considering that both of them have been shrouded in secrecy for many, many years?
Well, it was acknowledged that we had raised those issues, but it wasn't. You shouldn't expect, or even with respect, expect that you have a meeting like that and we put forward a position and they come up with a conclusion. That's simply not the way that the system works.
Prime Minister, you said going into this you wanted to stabilise Australia's relationship with China. What did you take away from that meeting in terms of a potential stabilisation of that relationship? What might it look like? And Mr Xi's opening statement said that he had noted you'd approached the China-Australia relations in a mature manner, and I attach great importance to your opinion. So on that stabilisation, to what extent do you think that has been directly a result potentially of your government's approach to China?
Well, I try to act in a mature way in all of our international relations. That's what we need to do. And one of the things that I've said is that we need to not try to score domestic political points through our international relations. I deal with things in Australia's national interest. That's what I've done as Prime Minister, and that's what I'll continue to do. I thought it was a very constructive discussion, and it was a positive development.
Prime Minister, in terms of the Ukraine war, did you join other world leaders in trying to urge China to intervene in some way? Did you have a message on that front?
Yes.
And are you able to tell us a little more about what you said?
Well, yes, I said that. I asked that China use its influence on Russia. I pointed out that the war in Ukraine was having an impact on the global economy and directly having an impact, which it is, on Australian energy prices and inflation. Last one.
So on that, how was that received, and do you expect there will be a strong communique at the end of the G20 Summit on the war?
The communique is being worked on, and I expect that it will be released appropriately, and you'll all get to see it at the same time. Thanks very much.